I'm Narelle Todd.
And I'm Essie Susan Smith.
We are the self-publishing author and marketing duo that has sold over 2 million books. But we didn't start out knowing how to sell books. Fast forward past many failed promotions and a lot of lessons learned, you will see how we went from self-publishing newbies to hitting the New York Times bestsellers list and making the USA Today Bestsellers list 19 times and counting. We created the Get My Book Out There podcast to give you simple yet effective marketing strategies to increase readership and book sales, so you know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, as well as some tips for staying mentally and physically well.
Let's get started.
And we are joined today with Cassandra Chandler. Hi, Cassandra.
Hello.
So Cassandra writes science fiction romance, plus, just some sci-fi. But you can tell us more on all the good stuff here, right? Because it's very interesting, I think, your writing career and can't even say the word trajectory. So one of the things that we wanted to talk to Cassandra today was about writing, of course. So, what has she discovered? What has she found as a writer? The process of writing and the process of marketing, because I think marketing is where a lot of authors get a bit caught up. And, just watching Cass change kind of trajectory and how she markets her books and some of the success she has just been amazing over this past 18 months or so. So we want to kind of dig in there and have a deep dive and just find out what Cass has been doing, what she's learned, what she's discovered. We always like to hear about works in progress and stories, just so I know when to fill up my reader. with all those to be read books that
Oh yes. Oh my gosh.
So let's get into it. Cass, tell us about how you got into being an author. What did that start process look for you? Was it a sudden decision? Been writing since you were a kid? Tell us about that.
I actually remember the exact first story that I ever came up with in my life. I was probably, I want to say I was between 3 and 5 because we were living in Cocoa Beach, Florida. I'm sorry, Cocoa, Florida. There's a big difference between Cocoa and Cocoa Beach. But my sister and I shared a room, and we had like a full-size bed we slept in, and she was only a couple years older than me, and I wouldn't shut up. And I really do think I was like somewhere between 3 and 5. And finally she said, look, I got to sleep. And she said, you need to entertain yourself. And I was like, how? I don't know how. And she said, make up a story for yourself. And I was like, what? And then she explained a little bit about how you can make up your own story. And then I laid there and I remember that the story was, this is again, like, I guess I was 5 when we moved to Cocoa. And the story was that I got engaged and my fiance and I went to see Romeo and Juliet. And that was the daydream. And that was the very first story I ever came up with. And I was hooked. And so ever since, I've constantly been coming up with stories. And I had done things before then that were, I don't know if I would call them stories or just kind of like disconnections from reality. Because in a preschool, I got into trouble for telling people that I was an android from Mars sent to Earth to observe humans. And that was in rural Ohio. That was a little weird for them, especially since at that time my hair darkened over the years. And when I was a child, it was like neon orange. It was not a normal looking color. So the children, I guess I really sold the story because I got in trouble for scaring the other children because I was an android.
That's kind of cool, though, for like an imagination for a child. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And
obviously they didn't appreciate it.
My mom still tells me every once in a while that whenever she would do her parent-teacher conferences when I was a little kid, the teachers were like, oh my God, and it's so great that you live on a farm and you have all those animals. And she'd be like, we live in an apartment around the corner. And the teachers would be like, no, there's no way that a kid this age is keeping track because she never changes her story. She's got a dog named blah, and she's got sheep and blah, blah, blah. And you live on a farm and all the details never change. I don't really remember that, but I believe it. So yeah, stories, I've always like had a very rich imaginative life, I should say.
Yeah. So you literally were creating story Bibles, like from the age of 7, it would seem.
Yes.
You had your characters in your world already created.
It's true.
That's very cool. So what tell us, what do you write today? How would you describe your stories today? So I imagine you've moved off the farm
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
story. So
I have moved
what
off
is it
the
like?
farm in the stories. I mostly write science fiction romance, and they are, I've learned a new term, a cinnamon roll hero. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I
No,
love
tell
it.
us about that.
Okay, cinnamon roll heroes they're alpha in their own way, but so they're very confident, they're strong, but they're also incredibly supportive, nurturing, and sweet and respectful. And that is my go-to. That's my chocolate cake with ice cream and hot cocoa on the side. That's everything. So my heroes, like, even when they are more like the most alpha person I think that I've ever written, still was respectful and supportive. And
Yeah.
in his heart with the heroine at least was very much a cinnamon roll. So my sci-fi romance, I have really strong characters, really strong female leads, with men who support them and are equally strong in their own way, but that they don't, throw their weight around quite as much as I've seen in some other stories.
Yeah. So it's not the alpha a-hole type role, which are in some, or the bully. What is it? I heard a term the other day. Bully alpha.
The bully
So
romances, I don't think I can't even read them. I have a friend who loves them and she talks to me about them a lot. And just the more she talks to me about them, I'm like, I still don't get it, but she's still trying to help me get it. But I'm like, I think that's going to be
Being in an abusive relationship.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Oh, I will.
she herself is like, her relationships, all of her relationships are amazing, because I'm really good friends with them. I think some people like the escape of seeing, they want to know that it's going to be okay. So
yeah.
maybe they've had relationships like that in the past, maybe they're in one at the moment, and they want to see somebody going through that, and then they want to see them be okay. And where I have a problem is that if it's a story where the guy or guys grows and becomes like not abusive, then I can read a lot. I've read stories where the guy started out really, and the girl too. Oh my god, sometimes the girls are just like, you should not have done that, lady. That's not okay.
Yeah.
But then in the end, I want to see them in a better place, treating each other better, because that's my thing.
Yeah.
So,
And I think, yes, it's
Now,
the redemptive arc.
yeah.
Sorry, Susan, you go.
there's that redemption arc, but there's also that author, I think you may realize a little bit more than some readers, that there's a responsibility. And, guys don't like to be portrayed as being a bully.
Mhm.
So, and you have to kind of look at it that way too, especially if the women are like, well, why aren't you bullying me more? And they're like, what?
That would be really sending weird signals. And I also love, like, all of my friends are, I would call them cinnamon roll guys. And so I love giving them a chance to see themselves in books, because they're like, they'll be reading it and they'll be like, I'm sensitive. I cry sometimes. That's okay. It's okay to be a dude and cry. And like, I've had male characters, like one of my biggest beefiest guys at one point. I like to flip gender expectations, so I actually have a paranormal romance where the guy realizes that the girl, that he will never be able to quit this girl, he loves her so much, and they don't really have a healthy dynamic. They've never had a healthy dynamic, so he's the one who winds up sitting on the edge of the bed crying, where he's like, I wish I could quit you. And then she comes in and says, basically, baby, I'm sorry I hurt you, but I'm never going to hurt you again. And then they have had their talk, they realize what's wrong, they fix the dynamic and move on to healthiness. But when I was writing that scene, I was just like going like, wait, there's something is different about this. And then I realized that I'd flipped the traditional gender roles, that normally it's the guy coming in and saying, oh no, I'm so sorry, I made a terrible mistake, please forgive me. But in this case, it was the lady who was like, oh, I totally misread that situation and I'm really sorry. And then they talked it out like adults.
And the reality
And I think
is
that's a key thing, like an adult.
Yeah.
I like that you get to the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And the reality is that men and women are both strong and weak, and no one is a cardboard cutout of alpha, or I don't know, feminine fatale, or the roles that we often associate with
Yeah.
with the different genders. Yeah, it we are all a mismatch of everything. So I think that's part of what's so powerful about your stories is that we get to see people as real people. It's not cut out of people. And I think that's what makes the story come alive. So when tell us about your writing process. You a pantster? Do you just do you plot? Are you a combo of everything? How do you write?
It depends on the story, and it depends on honestly, it depends on my non-writing life, I find. So the more chaotic my non-writing life is, the more I need an outline, because if I'm writing and I know that any second I'm going to get interrupted, then I need to have an outline that I'm working from. Otherwise, I'm going to be lost, and then the story will be disjointed. So I've pantsed a few books, but the other problem with that is I really like to sit down and know where I'm going. And so I had been writing these like really incredibly intense outlines that basically they're kind of like a really, really, really rough first draft, because like I have one that I'm sitting on that's for the fourth book in my Blades of Janus series. And I started outlining it because I started coming up with all of these scenes that came to me like, I got to get this down. I got to get it down. The outline is over 10,000 words long. The book is only going to be 80K. So that's 1/8 of the book right there. So I'll copy paste, like, here's chapter 1, and then I just expand it. I'm like, okay, I already know everything that happens. So now I just need to change it so that it's not like me downloading notes. It's like turn it into an actual story, make the people say it instead of me telling myself. And so, and then I expand it, and then in edits, I expand it even more. I'm very much a get it down and then build it up person.
Yeah. So
like I'm trying to think, the story I'm writing now is the third Signy and Seven book, Lar, and it has an outline. But the outline, like I have veered off course. And so when I go back and read the outline, recently I went back to read the outline and I was like, oh crap, I totally went off track. And there were some really golden lines in there that I wanted to use. So I had to go back and kind of retrofit some of the things that the heroine had said so that I could make her say these really cool lines that I come up with that didn't make sense with where I had gone with her. So I definitely use outlines to keep me on track to, sometimes I'll go and I'll look back and be like, oh no, scrap the outline. I like where I'm heading better. But other times I'll be like, oh yeah, I totally forgot that's why I was setting it up. And with Signy and Seven, the cool thing about it is I've never written a series on purpose before. Which is kind of hard to admit, but all of my other books was kind of like, oh wow, that was really fun. People seem to like it. I'm having fun, so I'll write another one. I wonder what's going to happen next. Oh, hey, this could happen. Okay, and then I'd have like ideas of stuff in the background and kind of write my way to it. With the Signy and Seven, I've got all 7 books thought out. I know it's basically one story spread into 7 books. So I have to outline as much as I can. And then I get to do really fun things like in Lars' book, they're going to talk about miracles. And it's important because the Signians don't have a word for miracle. They don't have a concept that matches it. And then in book 5, that's going to play up again, because then one of the Signians is going to be talking to the heroine and saying, well, have you heard of this word? I like it. I think we should think about this word in the context of our situation, which I shall not give away because that'd be a huge spoiler. But anyway, so yeah, that's my process. I outline and then I sometimes go off on tangents, as you well know, Narelle. And then I bring myself back to what I'm supposed to be doing if it's necessary.
I think that's the important part there, probably, if it's necessary, because sometimes your muse takes you actually where you need to go. The unplanned, sometimes, that can be where real gold is, not in terms of income, I mean, but just like the inspiration and the joy.
I'm going to hold her, Cass. I'm going to make sure that I hold this to her. This is on videotape, so she cannot send ballistic missiles towards us when our muse starts talking about all kinds of stuff that is not in the plan.
Yeah.
This relates to everybody except you, Susan.
Well, I'm pretty strict with my muse. I really am, because like recently I started getting distracted because the fall leaves start coming and the colors change, and then I always start thinking about fairies and urban fantasy, and I'm like, oh man, I have people who are waiting for the third Blades of Janus book too. I really should get that done. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm in the middle of this epic 7-book series with 3 spin-off novellas I'm busy. I don't have time for this. So I had to kind of, bring that muse back and say, if we're going to get done what I want to get done next year, we cannot afford to be distracted. And I'm sorry, Blades fans, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer, but I am working on it in the background when I need a break. But the muse has to listen to me. Don't
And
tell her
that's good. I love though how you've said that, because I think that that really encapsulates the whole concept around, you have, as an author, there's a creative part, and then there's also a business side of things. And one of the things that I've seen you doing over the past 18 months is actually merging these two together. So it used to be probably you were more muse driven before, and a smattering over here, but you're bringing those two things together, and that's a really powerful thing as an author, when you can get them together and it's all part of the same you're not a creative and you're not a business, it's both together, because it needs to be both together. So how have you found that for yourself? What's some of the things that you would say to, say, a new author around creating an author business? What's been going on for you that's seen the change?
Well, of course, I would say take your classes. Because that's what I've been saying. Okay, so I know it's an investment in your future, but I had so many false starts and I had so many dead ends, and it's expensive. I mean, when you don't know where you're going and you wind up with the wrong person. I had so many coaches before you that were just like, they didn't know what to do with me, and I felt so bad, because I'm like, this is all gold, but it has nothing to do with what I'm doing, so I can't use any of it. Or I could use like a teeny bit. But so I would say, find the coach that works for you. And for me, it's Narelle Todd. Get my book out there. Sorry, shameless plug for you. I'm sorry. I'm going to do it. So learning how to find the problem I had was that I was trying really too hard to put the business over the muse. And like, my muse doesn't mind if I say, hey, we're going to write this series and it's going to be epic and it's going to be so much fun, and we're just going to write it. And I'm sorry to say, we're going to write it for basically 2 years, because I've been writing on the Signiums for a year and getting all the outlines done and stuff. All the covers are done, all the marketing graphics are done, and it was so fun to do all of it. It didn't feel like work at all. It was effortless. And what I was doing when I started out was I was trying to think, okay, how am I going to market this? How am I going to market this? This book isn't marketable, but I have to write it anyway, because like my muse would say, you're going to write it anyway. So the marketing, like the writing was harder, because I was writing something I loved, but I was at the same time, I was just like, thinking there's no way I'm ever going to be able to market this. And that taints the whole experience. And because I was so focused on the business side of it, when I should have been more working on just building out the backlist, that kind of hurt my soul, like my writer soul, and just which is my soul. So now when I look at it, I'm like, okay, these are fantastic books. These are hilarious in lots of places, but they're not just funny. They're also, they're deep. They have lessons, maybe, I don't know. But they're escapism. They're really great escapes for people. And they show a different way, because I don't find the stuff that happens in my books and the relationship dynamics, I don't find them anywhere. That's why I'm writing these books. That's why I can't stop, because I'm like, it's not out there otherwise. So what I'm doing now is I'm just taking my joy, which is now so much more present in everything that I do, and that is my marketing. It's like, Laura, I'm scared to death of this book, which means it's good, because when you're scared that you're onto something. So I'm scared to death writing this book. Like, I've never ever dealt with spiritual systems in any culture. I've tried really hard not to mention it. I'm just like, oh God, I don't want to get into this, because it's a touchy subject for a lot of people. But at the same time, I'm like, Signians have a really robust spiritual system here. It's part of their existence. And so I'm like going into it and explaining it. And I'm like, this is going to be my marketing is going to be, look, guys, we're going to get deep. We're going to go there and we're going to learn all we can about these aliens, instead of seeing more of a kind of like, just like, shallow view of them. So you find the things that resonate, and that's where your marketing goes. You find your joy. You find a way to share it, because people are attracted to people who are having fun and that are expressing joy. And if you can find your joy and fun, which, I mean, why else are we doing this if we're not having fun? Then share it with people, because that's the point. I write my books to help people escape, to help them, and not escape like in a, like, here, ignore your life, come read this book, but in a, hey, you know what, you deserve a break. Come over here for a while. Let's run through the galaxy together and have a lot of fun. And then you'll come back and you'll be refreshed and ready to really authentically connect with the people in your lives now that you've recharged some. So your marketing should be the same. And so that's what I would say, like for a new writer, is focus on your stories. What makes your stories, nobody else's. Focus on that. What makes you have joy from them? And then focus on that and bring it out in your marketing. Communicate that to other people.
So powerful. And I'm just looking at your little bubble thing behind you there, and your tagline there, love, light, and laughter. Literally what you just spoke about. So, you've got everything is working together for you. And I think that's part of the magic that happens when you start to focus on what is it that's unique about my stories and what do I want to share with people. And since you've been able to do that,
I think also the change that I've seen over Cass over the last 18 months is that she's finally understands that, and she's embraced it so that she wants to share it. And it's no longer, when we had talked before, when we first met, you would see like this much from here up of her face, and it literally, as she grew, you would see a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And to me, that brings that love, light, and laughter out, because it's like, you're seeing that love for her stories and the confidence grow, and it turned this light on in her. And now she's just, I see you as just bubbling with that passion for the stories, and you're embracing everything that you've learned, and your readers are reacting to that energy. I mean, it really is a beautiful energy, and it attracts people.
Well, thank you. I don't think I would have found it on my own, because I was seeing it way too much as a business. And when you treat it too much as a business, then the muse starts to starve, and that's no good for anybody.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I always say is it's about your business model, and you need to find the right business model for you. And, there is the right to market. That's a business model. But it's often portrayed as this is the only way you can make money. To that, I just say it's just one business model. There are many business models. And when you found the right business model for you, you were able to increase sales and engagement and all those sorts of things because of that. So I think it's really important. And of course, the confidence comes then from that, when you actually can see that people want to read your stories. Like they're out there, they just needed the right message or the right way to reach them. So I think to all the new people out there, this is what I would just say to you, is just find the right business model for you. So Cass, Susan, did you have some questions for Cass?
Pretty much everything that you asked has been spot on, and I love Cass's responses. I mean, they're just so, reflective of everything that she's learned and the growth that she's seen, and just the power behind what she's learned and embraced, and finding that balance between her muse and her business model. That it's beginning to show. And I'm thinking of it kind of, Cass, what about you? Are you feeling more confident about going into 2022 with what you've learned?
Absolutely. And one of the simplest lessons was actually one of the most powerful, and that is to just take a minute, breathe, and look around you and see if you've already got a lot more of what you're looking for than you realize. Because I had reviews that I didn't even know were there, and I try to keep up with reviews pretty well, but I had again kind of gotten bogged down with the business stuff and thinking too much, like, oh gosh, how am I ever going to find a market for this? There's no market for this. And meanwhile, I was getting reviews from people saying, oh my God, this is great. Why aren't there more books like this? And I know human psychology, we're like wired to focus on, it's like one negative comment can obliterate 10 positive comments, and that's so messed up. So I've been working on, like, the mindset things that I've been learning from Narelle have been so incredibly helpful, because it kind of made me start looking around and going like, oh, like I think one of my books Grey Card has over 100 reviews on Amazon. I'm like, I don't remember that happening. I don't remember when that occurred. And then, like, I have to set aside time now every week. I get to set aside time every week to talk to readers who are emailing me, and they're emailing me these amazing messages that are just so great. One of them I'm becoming like friends with, which is really cool. And I'm having so much fun. Like every time I see an email from them, I'm just like, oh yay, I can't wait to read this. And we're doing a lot of back and forthing. And so like that's part of the point too, is to connect with like-minded people is so important. And once you start seeing that, it is a huge confidence boost, because you're like, these are real people. These are not like, I spend so much time with the made up people in my head. I didn't make these people up. They're real. They're out there and they're buying my books. They're reading them. They're loving them. They're telling other people to buy them, which is amazing. And that's the biggest confidence boost of all. I mean, I know I try really hard not to focus too much on sales, but it's hard because I'm like, there's always a tipping point for a writer where they're like, I could actually do this and have this be my thing. And when I think of all the stories I have to write, I'm like, I really need more time to write in a day. And so you gotta find that balance too, where you like look at your goals and you look at your timelines. But going into 2022, like I'm really just totally focusing on Signians at the moment. And for the next year, that's going to be my thing. And instead of focusing on, I got to get these books done, I got to get them done, I hope I get them done. It'd be great if I got them done. My main focus though is on like mining as much joy out of the experience of writing them as possible, and then turning that into something that other people can share, so that I am bringing more joy into the world, because that again is my thing. Even when I'm writing, like the one dichotomy that I know we've talked about a lot is that I have some books that are like have worlds that are more dangerous. I want to say they're not like darker, because like I know there's like dark science fiction romance, and I don't write that, but I have worlds where people get injured and go through some stuff that's a little bit more, but it's still about found family. It's still about people who love each other, whether it's a romantic or bromantic, or there needs to be a lady romantic word.
Yes, yeah.
Like sisterhood, brotherhood, it's
Bro
all
romance is such a cool name. Like such a cool
What
thing. We need a bro romance. Yeah, like having a bromance. Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta
Women
work on
need
that.
something like that too.
So yeah, heading into 2022, I feel a lot more focused and a lot less pressure, but the kind of pressure that I feel is like a healthier pressure, if that makes sense. Because it's like, I know I've shared this with you guys before, so I'm going to share it like an exclusive for this podcast. I have an idea for a Christmas story for the Signians, and I would love to get the whole series done so that and that book done so that I could share it next Christmas. I don't know if it's going to happen, but that's my pressure, is like, oh geez Louise, it's like if I can finish eating all of these cupcakes at the end of the year, I get a cheesecake.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's the best kind of pressure. It's like, oh, I don't know if I can eat more of these delicious cupcakes.
And
but
isn't that
I do.
and the pressure, talking of pressure, the pressure that comes from an internal thing like that, of like, I've got to get these books written because I want to do, my cherry on top, the Christmas book. It's such a different kind of pressure. It's the healthy pressure you're talking about, as opposed to, I've got to write this book because I got to make money, or I've got to write this book because I promised it to somebody, or I've got to write this book. The whole motivation behind, the Christmas book is so different compared to if you're writing for the have to reasons, I should be, all those sorts of things. It's a different kind of pressure, and it's a healthy pressure. Yeah. That's awesome. Oh, I'm glad you've got that pressure.
That's the kind of pressure that will get the books out and make the books even better.
Yes. Yeah. And as you say, it brings the fun into it. As you know, one of my 5 core values is fun. If it's not fun, why the heck are we doing anything? Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I'm like, are you a fun person? No, I don't think we can be together. It's almost, I'm kind of at that point in my life of it needs to be easy and fun. And I call it the no drama llamas.
Oh, yeah.
When I talk to the team, it'll be, with the team I work with, I'm like, okay, we're a no drama llama group here. Let's have fun with what we're doing.
Keep the drama on the page. I don't want it in my life.
Yeah.
I just want to.
Yeah. And when it does happen in life, you can then throw it into the page and kind of deal through some of it, on page, definitely.
I know I'm talking about blades a lot, but that's eventually I'm going to go to that one. I'm going to tell a story that I'm like, oh God, should I tell this story? We had an issue with spiders in our basement, and they're gone. It's all fixed and better. But for a while, spiders were a really big part of my life, and it was not pleasant. And that's actually where I got the idea for the very first Blades of Janus book, the marketing around that was actually probably one of my most successful marketing campaigns before you. And I called it the spider-headed zombie romance, because there were spider-headed zombies, but it was a romance. And whenever I would talk about it, like, people would be like, I am so intrigued. How the heck can you have, like, are the spider-headed zombies the ones having the romance? Or is it a romance with those guys in the background? Which that's what it is. But so that's where, like, you take what's happening in your life and you just kind of, like, you can process it. And then the cool thing is, like, I have talked to so many people now, like, they'll come to me and say, hey, I know you had this issue and you fixed it. How did you fix it? Tell me. And so I can help them. Or, like, I'll have someone telling me about something that's going on in their life, and I'll tell them that story. And then they want to read the book because they're like, I want to see how. And this is really, I think, at the core of why people read. They want to see people going through horrible things or challenging things and being okay. Like, people who read romance, I should say. And that's like, I don't read anything else because I have to know it's going to be okay. And all of the people that I've talked to who really love romance, that's a big part of why they read it. And sometimes I don't even think they necessarily realize it, but I'm like, you're telling me about like these bully romances that you read. And I'm like, I totally get it. You want to see that there can be people who seem like bad people, but once you get to know them and once you go through things together, then at the end you find out, or they grow. You want to see that people can grow and change, that people that seem like they're in a terrible situation, that it's going to be okay. And so, like, when you get the paranormal stuff and the sci-fi stuff, that's even better for me, because then you can do, like, really weird stuff and help people process things on other levels of consciousness, basically, where they'll read a story and be like, I feel better about this totally unrelated thing and I don't understand why, but I'll take it. And that's the calling part of it. Because, Susan, you talk a lot about your responsibility as a writer, and I loved the first time you talked about that. I was like, I was down here, you couldn't see, but like below, I was like, oh, yes, because that was before I had moved up.
Like what you're saying right now is that people will be able to see this and they'll be able to recognize different characteristics and apply it to their own life, and it makes them better or stronger by the time they finish reading your story.
Yeah, or it helps them
heal.
And
exactly, keeping that focus on that you're not trying to make the place a darker place, but you're trying to bring light, love, light, and laughter into those darker lives.
Yeah. And that's with my Department of Homeworld Security series. I had so many people who kept asking me they wanted to see more about the coalition. And I was like, guys, no, you don't. And they're like, no, really. I mean, you peppered in all of these world buildings, and like some of them were people I knew really well. And they're like, I know you're sitting on stuff you're not sharing. And I was like, yes, I am. But you feel it in the stories, and the stuff that I'm sitting on is not love, light, and laughter. It's the drama llama behind it that drives it. And I remember talking to one person, and I said, let me just tell you one thing that happened in the coalition that's going to feed into a story, but I'm going to totally gloss over it in the book. It'll be okay, so you can read it and you'll feel the catharsis, because you'll be like, oh God, this was a terrible situation, but look, they're okay. And I told him like the reality of what had happened in the background to these two characters, Mark and Dane. And the look on his face was just like, at first he was, yeah, I get to know. And by the end he was like, oh God, I don't want to see that. I was like, yes, you don't want me to go through that emotional part, because that's not, you don't have to go all the way down to get catharsis,
Yeah.
So with the Signians, I get to go more into those places. With the Department of Homeworld Security, I've always tried to keep it super duper duper light. And the problem is, now that I'm like 15 books into it, it's getting kind of harder to hide the things. Like the curtain is like bulging, all the stuff that I've hidden behind the curtain is starting to spill out. So I'm like, okay, I need to move to, I need the readers to, I need to manage their expectations. So Homeworld is going to be lighter. I need to come up with series where I can like kind of push this stuff out from behind the curtain, bring it into view, and say, okay, well, just so you know, like, here's some stuff I should probably as a writer fix for you, so that you don't have to be horrified that that this happened and I haven't really actually fixed it yet, and give them that experience though, where they know that everything's going to be okay in the end, at least for the good guys.
Yeah, and very important point there about the fact that you don't have to bring dark into your story explicitly. I'm meaning. You don't have to bring it explicitly into your story. You can allude to it, touch on it. It gives it sometimes the gravitas the story may need, but you don't have to bring the reader into, say, the horror of whatever a situation is. So for new authors out there, keep that in mind. You don't have to tell everything. You can, allude to experiences, but still get the same kind of result.
Yeah,
because not everybody wants to read the horror.
Thank you. I'm one.
Yeah. And that's it. And it's also about knowing your audience too. So if your audience is craving more of the horror, then you would create something for that. Your audience is not those kind of people. So it's also about who you are as a writer and what you want to write, and finding your audience who also appreciates that same thing. Yeah. And you know your avatar really well.
Yeah. And well, my avatar is very much like me. And I just think, what kind of headspace do I want to exist in?
Yes.
And I think that another pothole that you can fall into as a new writer is you want to share everything that you come up with. Everything. You want it to be on the page. And like, I have talked to people for 2 hours before, and they're like, oh my God, I want to see this. What book is this in? And I'm like, oh, this isn't in any of the books. This is just backstory that's in my head. And then when you read the books, it comes through. So like, one of the first writing groups that I was ever in, they read I actually started out writing a high fantasy romance with dragon shifters before it was actually a popular thing, which was kind of funny. This was like a long time ago. But when my writing group read this one little piece with just 2 guys in one room in a castle, they said, I don't know how you did it, because I don't see anywhere. I can't point to anywhere on the thing, but I have this sense of the world outside of the walls. And I was just like, at the time I had spent 20 years fleshing out this world. And I'm like, that's because I know the capitals, I know the countries, I know the kings, I know the magic system, I know the gods, I know the seasons, I know everything. And so I know what's outside of the walls. I didn't mention any of that stuff, but they felt it. And with everything that I write, I think that you get a sense of like what is beyond, what is the next thing. It all feeds into it. So I think that's an important thing. You don't have to put it all on the page. It has value, even if it's just in your head or just in your series notes.
Very good point. Thank you, Cass, for chatting with Susan and I today. I think for any new writer, go and have a look at Cass and how she's been doing things. I think you'll learn a lot just even from just following along on her journey. So, Cass, where would we go to find you? What's your contact details?
Well, you can email me at author@cassandra-chandler.com. And you can also go to my webpage, which is cassandra-chandler.com. And I have a Facebook readers group, and I have a Facebook page. And I'm not very active on Twitter, but I do have a Twitter account that I need to check more often. But those first ones are the main ones. And my webpage, I'm hoping to do even more with that. And of course, signing up for my newsletter is the best thing, because my newsletter is my core communication, and I share extra things with my newsletter peeps all the time. So that'd be the way.
And do you have a freebie that people can read to get a sense of what you write? Do you have anything like that? I
do. If one of the things that my newsletter subscribers get is I have a book called Stories by the Fire, and it is a collection of short stories for all of my worlds. So there's like some from the Department of Homeland Security, there's some from Summer Park Psychics, some from Blades of Janus. So you can see a lot of them. And as I write more stories, then I periodically will send an updated link to my newsletter people and say, hey guys, there's a new short story in the book. Feel free to download it. Here's the link. Enjoy. So that's one of the things that I offer.
Okay. So Cassandra-Chandler.com for all the good stuff. Excellent. Thanks for chatting with us, Cass. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Cass.
Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for joining us today. You know we've got way more information we want to share with you to increase your book sales. So please come and join me at facebook.com. Get my book out there.